Welcome to Barca News. It is May 4th, 2026. And ladies and gentlemen, Barcelona once again being interested in Monaco's left back. Also, Liverpool reportedly readying an offer for Jules Kounde. I'm going to tell you how much that offer is, and I'm going to tell you who would be the alternative to replace Koundé if he does end up leaving. And finally, Bastoni. What's going on with his signing? Especially after the statements of Inter Milan's president and sporting director. We have a lot to discuss, so let's begin. Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Mo. Welcome to the Barca News live podcast, which is my favorite thing to do. And of course, the podcasts are on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, where not only we discuss Barca news, but we're also get to interact with you lovely people in the chat section by reading your comments and reacting to them live. So start filling out the chat section with your comments, your questions, whatever you want to say. Lay it out on me. Lay it out. If you want to say, Mo, you fucking suck, do it. Fuck it. This is what these podcasts are for. Now, for those of you who be watching when the podcast ends, I will be putting timestamps in the description and chapters in the timeline in case you do want to skip through the discussion and get straight into the news. Of course, I don't recommend it because I feel like the discussion is the best part of the podcast because we get such a variety of opinions and comments because, of course, we all think differently, and that's a beautiful thing. But again, if you do want to skip through it, the chapters in the timeline, they will be there in case you want to. Now, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. All these things can help the channel continue to grow. And of course, it makes me feel good that I'm doing a good job. If I'm not, of course, let me know. If you're looking for any Barcelona jerseys or merchandise, make sure to Goal Kids Kit Bag. No, sorry, just Kit Bag and Fanatics. Kit Bag for all your Barcelona and football gear. Fanatics for all other sports, basketball, American football, baseball, hockey, you name it. If you're looking to place any sports bets, whether on a Barcelona match or on any sporting event around the world, UFC match, boxing, you name it, you can head to Bet Us. I think you get $200 free if you sign up. All the links are down below in the description. If you click on them, you get access to those deals and offers that otherwise you wouldn't get access to if you went straight to those websites. All right, let's begin with the news. And the first bit of news, well, it's an interesting fact, a number, a statistic that I came across while I was preparing for this podcast. It's not something I planned to talk about, but when I came across it, I was like, all right, we got to talk about it. And it's honestly, it's not going to surprise you. But nonetheless, it's a very interesting fact that I came across because, ladies and gentlemen, since the VAR has been implemented in La Liga, the VAR has benefited Real penalties 87 times. And it has prejudiced them 48 times. So 87 times Madrid benefited from VAR, 48 they got screwed by VAR, and that's a plus 39 balance. You know, if you subtract the 48 times they got the 48 times that they got prejudiced from the 87 times that they got benefited, well, they have a positive net number of 39. So in other words, Real Madrid have benefited more from the VAR than they have been screwed by the VAR. Now, let's look at Barcelona. Because since the inception of the VAR in the Spanish league, Barcelona have benefited from the VAR 48 times, and they have been prejudiced or screwed over by the VAR 58 times. Benefited 48, screwed over 58. And of course, if you subtract the times that Barcelona have been screwed over by the times that they have benefited, we have a net value of negative 10. In other words, Barcelona have been screwed over by the VAR more times than they've actually benefited, where Real penalties have benefited more from the VAR than they have been screwed over. Are you surprised? Because I'm not, right? And this is only one of the million examples that show time and time again that all throughout the history of the Spanish league, Real Madrid have benefited from refereeing mistakes. Again, this is not an opinion. This is a fact. You can go back and check the numbers. Madrid have been benefited by referees since the inception of the Spanish league. And what is surprising about this VAR statistic, it's not the fact that Madrid have benefited from the VAR, but that for so long, for so many decades, we knew that referees favored Madrid. We knew that. The numbers are there. The proof is there. The evidence is there. We've always known that. But when VAR became a thing, when La Liga announced that they were going to spend millions of euros installing this technology, wiring all these stadiums with 34 cameras each, TVs, train people to use it, train referees to use it, I thought, maybe now we have a shot. Maybe after decades and decades of referees favoring Real Madrid, maybe the VAR will now put a stop to that. Because now we have cameras, we have computers, technology. Technology can always, beat humans. But it turns out I was wrong. Because not even VAR can change an undisputable truth, an undisputable fact that referees have always benefited Real Madrid. But from Madrid, they're going to still sell you the narrative that Negreira. Barcelona bribed referees to Negreira. Barcelona won trophies thanks to Negreira, even though not only is there zero evidence that referees favored Barcelona during the Negreira years, but in fact, every single ounce of evidence proves the opposite. That Madrid have always benefited from the referees. And of course, that can be traced to the fact that all the source of power sits where? In the city of Madrid. And that those that rule football are usually what? Madridistas. Presidents of the La Liga. Presidents of the Royal Spanish Football Federation. Presidents of the Technical Committee of Referees. Referees themselves have always been Madridistas. So, of course, they're going to benefit Madrid. And again, this is proven time and time again. The stats are there. The numbers are there. The evidence is there. Madridistas have always benefited from refereeing. So the next time some moron, some idiot, some retard tries to tell you, Negreira, slap him across the face. Not physically, but with these actual stats, with these numbers, because they are outright wrong. They know it. We know it. Everybody knows it. But they're still going to scream Negreira because they're not looking for the facts. They're not looking for the truth. They're not looking for empirical evidence. What they're looking for is a small soundbite, a phrase, a word, something they can just scream back whenever you point to the fact that they suck. And that despite Real Madrid being backed by the monarchy, despite Real Madrid being backed by the dictator Franco, despite Madrid getting everything they needed, all the resources, all the money, everything they needed to succeed, despite being always favored by the referees, Barcelona has been able to become one of the greatest clubs in the world. And that is an incredible achievement. Because when everything is going against you, the refs, the Spanish Federation, La Liga itself, the CTA, the government, all the powers, all the money, all the elites, everybody against you, and you can still manage to win 28 La Liga titles, 5 Champions Leagues, 30, I think it's 34 now, Copa del Rey, and God knows how many Spanish Super Cups. That makes it even more special. Because one thing is to win on a plain, on a level field. It's a whole nother thing to win when everything is against you. And that to me is a beautiful thing. And this is why forever I will be proud to be a Barcelona fan. Anyways, that is all I want to talk about. Let's move on to the comment section. Let's begin with the comment section. And then, of course, we're going to talk about Barcelona's plan B for the left back position, because we do have some news coming out of the French league, or the Ligue 1. All right, let's begin with Stanley, who says, "Hey, Mo, it's been a while since I caught a live podcast. Should Barca even bother investing building a team for the Champions League, since how unfair the calls are against Barca? Just focus on La Liga." Yes, absolutely. Because teams that only focus on their leagues and not in the Champions League are mediocre teams. And we, my friend, are not a mediocre club. We, my friend, are not a La Liga team only. We are one of the greatest clubs in history. We are one of the greatest clubs in the world. And great clubs, well, they aim to win everything. This whole focus on this, so focus on that, that's for small clubs like Real Madrid, right? Who will focus on only the Champions League, but not the other ones. That's what small clubs do, like Real Madrid. This is why we have 2 trebles and a sextuple, and Madrid have 0 of each. Because great clubs, big clubs, they compete for everything. They aim to win everything. And this is what we've always done, and this is what we should always continue to do. And the refereeing calls, that's not an excuse, because champions become champions despite all obstacles. And you know what refereeing bad calls are? It's an obstacle. Injuries, it's an obstacle. Fatigue, it's an obstacle. All those are obstacles that you have to overcome to become a champion, to become a winner. If you are going to let an obstacle like bad refereeing calls stop you, or any other obstacle, then you're not a winner. You're not a champion. You're a quitter. You're a loser. Because that's what losers do. That's what quitters do. They quit the moment things get difficult. They quit the first obstacle they come across. That's what losers do. And I'm sorry, FC Barcelona is no loser club. We're not a quitter club. We are a winning club. We're a champion club. We're one of the greatest clubs in history. So yes, absolutely, we should focus on winning the Champions League. Absolutely, we should focus on winning the Champions League despite bad refereeing calls. Because guess what? We did it in Spain for the past 125 years despite everybody and everyone being against us. When Franco banned Catalan language, banned Catalan symbols, banned Catalan flag, and even shuttered Barcelona Stadium, and even assassinated the Barcelona president, did Barcelona quit? Fuck no. They continued fighting, and they became the greatest club in Spain and one of the greatest clubs in the world. So if a civil war, if a military assassinating your president is not a reason to stop, why should some mediocre referee be the reason for you to stop? Absolutely not. Sabio says, Waiting Mo, definitely sell Koundé if that offer is legit. Xavi Spot have to step up with Eddie Garcia as a right back, substitutes for the other way around. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. I think, would I be in favor of selling Koundé? Yes. But do I believe that Xavi Spot could be the starting right back? No. I think that's next level delusional. Can he maybe start against mid to lower teams in La Liga? Sure. But do I expect Xavi Spot to step up
in the quarterfinals of the Champions League against PSG or in a semifinal against Bayern Munich? Absolutely not. And that's not because Xavi Esparza sucks. That's because he's young. He lacks experience. He lacks the knowledge. So would I be down to sell Koundé? Yes. But do I believe that Xavi Esparza or Eric Garcia could be our starting fullbacks on the big stage? No, I don't. Maybe Eric Garcia, but I think he still needs a little bit more work. But Xavi Esparza, come on, let's be real here. Raul says, hello, Mo. Good to be here with you today. I urge Deco to scout and deploy the right players for Hansi Flick next season. Our squad depth was really poor this season. Keep up the good work, Bo. Thank you, my friend. I hope so, too. And Choo-choo. What's up, Choo-choo? It's always good to see you in the chat section. Choo-choo says, sell Koundé, but give Ferran 45 years to deliver. I hope Koundé and Balde lives. That's a fair point. But to also be fair to Barcelona, it's not that Barcelona have given Koundé all these, Ferran, all these years to develop. It's that Ferran has not wanted to leave. That's the thing with Ferran. After signing Ferran, I think Barcelona immediately noticed that, well, he's a mess. And Barcelona have tried to sell him pretty much like every summer transfer market and every summer winter transfer market, except this past summer. But he's refused to leave. So I don't think it's a fair characterization to say that Barcelona have given him chance after chance. It's not that. It's just Ferran has never wanted to leave. And I don't see him leaving this summer either. I think the only way we get rid of Ferran is to let his contract die out, which will be next summer, which I hope that we do. And I hope Deco doesn't have the brilliant freaking idea of renewing him, because that would be absolutely stupid. The Jeff says, I don't think Munoz is good enough for us. He's not a very good dribbler nor finisher, and his decision-making is not the best. He can't carry our attack if Lamine is out. Well, first of all, Munoz would not be carrying our attack if Lamine is out. Munoz would be a substitute to Rafinha. So our attack would be expected to be carried by Lamine and Rafinha. And if Rafinha is injured, that's when Victor Munoz would step in. Not if Lamine Yamal is injured, right? For Lamine Yamal, we would need someone else to step in his place. Now, as far as what you're saying about Victor Munoz, here's the thing. Barcelona are not trying to sign Victor Munoz because he is the player who's fully done and ready and developed and could come to Barcelona and start tomorrow. No. Why Barcelona want to sign Victor Munoz is because the potential that he has, which you might not see right now, but that's why we have scouts. That's why we have professionals who can see what most of us regular people cannot. Because we can only see what a player is doing at the moment, right? This is what we can see. But there's other people out there, professionals, people who have that gift that you and I don't have. They can not only see what a player is doing right now, but what a player can or might be able to do in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, right? Depends on how young they are. You know, when scouts sign a 5-year-old, they're not signing him because of what he's doing right now. I mean, I'm sure if you and I look at a 5-year-old, we'll be like, what is this guy doing? This kid is stupid, right? But, you know, when they sign him, it's because they can see that this kid in 10, 12 years is going to be big, right? When Barcelona signed Lamine, it's not because Lamine was doing what he's doing right now at the age of 6 or 7 years old or however old we signed him for, right? It's because they saw that, hey, this kid in 10 years is going to be one of the best in the world. And that's exactly what happened. So you might not be impressed with what Victor Munoz is doing right now, but that's not what Barcelona are signing him. Barcelona want to sign him because of what he'll be able to do in 2 or 3 years. So P4K Chema says, Mo, I saw that both Maresca and Pep love Rafinha for City. Whoever takes the manager role wants him, and they have 200 million to spend this summer. Do you think something happens? We could buy Doku from them. Well, here's the thing. Man City are not going to sell Doku to sign Rafinha. Okay, that would be an incredibly dumb move on their behalf. If they if they try to sign Rafinha, I should say, it's going to be because, well, they're trying to reinforce their squad. A lot of times people mistake reinforcing with rebuilding. Selling a player to bring another player, that sometimes is not reinforcing. That a lot of times is just you swapping one for another one, right? If you have a core, you want to build on it. You don't want to trade pieces, right? And Man City are not going to sell Doku to bring Rafinha. Man City are going to want to sign Rafinha to Adam so he can play with Doku. So they can have both, right? You don't sell one of the best players in the world to bring another one. You bring another one to strengthen your squad. Let's see. Edward says, I've made the observation before. Flick would not start Koundé so many times if he wasn't any good. Koundé know when to overlap Lamine. What do you think that El Clasico lineup will be? Well, obviously, Koundé is good. People thinking that Koundé is like all of a sudden forgot how to play. That's not true. We've seen what Koundé can do. Starting at Sevilla, where he was a beast of a center back, and then, of course, ending with all these seasons where he has been a great right back for Barcelona. The problem is that this season, his form has dipped. This doesn't all of a sudden mean that he forgot how to play. Of course, he knows how to play. The problem is that something has turned off in Koundé where he's not as motivated as before. Doesn't mean that all of a sudden he forgot his tactics and he forgot how to position himself and how to play and how to overlap with Lamine and blah, blah, blah. It means that something is not motivating him. Whether it's the lack of competition, because Koundé pretty much has that spot guaranteed, right? He has nobody to compete with. Sure, Xavi's spot has potential, but he's nowhere near to be able to compete with Koundé. Maybe in 5 years, 4 years, something. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's the lack of competition. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he just winning those 3 trophies last season filled his belly, and all of a sudden he feels he's not hungry anymore. I don't know what the reason is. So he's clearly good, right? He was one of the best right backs in all of Europe last season. And you don't just forget how to play overnight. The problem is what is figuring out why has Koundé lost his motivation, and then try to change that so he can get motivated again. And if he can't, then yeah, eventually we should sell him. But anyways, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's go back to the news because we do have to talk about fullbacks, starting with Caio Henrique. Now, as you know by now, Barcelona are looking to sign João Cancelo because even though Barcelona fully trust Alejandro Balde, they know his potential, they know his skills, they've seen what he's been able to do. I mean, at 18 years old, he did bench Jordi Alba, and after that, he's been having phenomenal season after phenomenal season. But this season, of course, we've all seen his form dip, and Barcelona believe that that's due to a lack of competition, because consciously or subconsciously not having competition, believe it or not, it does affect your performance. Because if you have a guaranteed spot, all of a sudden, well, that's your motivation, right? Players, since they're little kids, since they're 4 or 5 years old, they are wired to give their best in order to progress, right? They want to progress. Well, first, they want to get the minutes. They want to become a starter. Once they do that, now they want to progress to the next team. And once they make it to the next team, now they want to become a starters in that team. And once they do, now they start pushing for the next team. And that's how they work their way up, right? From the under 5s to under 7, under 10, under 12, under boom, 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 Juvenil B, Juvenil A, Barça Athletic, boom, first team, right? You've been working for the past 10, 15 years to make it to the first team. You're in the first team. Now your motivation is to become the starter. So you keep pushing, you keep training, you keep working hard, you keep giving it your all to become the starter, and then bam, you're the starter. You have achieved the goal that you have been working for since you were 5 years old. You have made it all the way to the first team, and you have become a starter for the first team. And all of a sudden, there's nothing to push for. That's it. You accomplished what you wanted to accomplish, and no one's taking that away from you because you have no competition. So consciously or subconsciously, you're going to stop pushing. You're going to start running as hard as you did before. You're going to stop training as hard as you did before. You're going to stop playing as hard as you did before until all of a sudden they can all be taken away. Then you're going to start pushing again because now you're thinking, okay, I've worked to achieve this goal for the last 10, 15 years. And this motherfucker is about to take it away from me because he's good and he's training hard. So now all of a sudden you have the motivation again to start pushing hard because you don't want to lose that. You've worked your whole life towards that goal. So competition is a must. It's a must in sports. It's a must in life. So Barcelona believe that what Balde is lacking is clearly competition because we've all seen what he could do. He's clearly talented. He clearly has a lot of potential. So, of course, their goal is to sign Joao Cancelo, who, to the surprise of everyone, including me, has been having a pretty good season. Now, what's the problem with Joao Cancelo? Is that Saudi or Al Hilal want 15 million euros for his signing, something that Barcelona are not willing to do because A, they don't have the money, right? They have their very few money, and that money needs to go to emergency signings like the center forward, the left wing, and the center back. And two, as great as Cancelo's doing, after all, he is 32, 33 years old. He's towards the end of his career. Do you really want to pay that much? No, you don't have the money for it. And even if you did, it's not really a smart move to pay that much money or more for someone who's nearing the end of his career. So Barcelona's goal is still to sign Cancelo. But if Al Hilal maintain their position, which so far they have, of you either pay me 15 or you're out, Barcelona are now looking at options B. In other words, they're still going to try to sign Cancelo, but if this doesn't work out, well, option B would be Caio Henrique, someone we've talked about in the past, someone that has been on Deco's radar for quite some time. If you don't know who he is, he's a 26-year-old left back, currently playing at Monaco. You know, that he's Brazilian, that typical Brazilian fullback, offensive, speed, 1v1 skills, you name it. Kind of like a Marcelo profile, but not that I'm comparing Caio Henrique to Marcelo. Of course not. I think Marcelo's gonna be gonna go down in history as one of the greatest Brazilian fullbacks. I'm not saying Caio Henrique is that, but you know, that similar profile. Now, Caio Henrique has 1 year left on his contract, which means you can be signed for cheap, right? Because whenever a player enters their final year of their contract, clubs either renew him or they have to sell because next summer he would become a free agent. And well, it's better to sell for cheap than, well, not making a single euro because that player left as a free agent for the next summer. So Barcelona believe that they could sign Caio Henrique between 12 to 15 million euros. And in fact, they have already initiated contact with the player's entourage to see if he would be interested to come to Barcelona. Now, here's the kicker. You might say, Mo, 12 to 15 million. That's what Al Hilal want for Joao Cancelo. So why not just pay the 15 million for Joao Cancelo instead of paying it for Caio Henrique? Well, here's the kicker, right? The left back position is not really a priority for Barcelona, right? Barcelona's priority is the center back, the left wing, and the center forward. And they only have enough money, or hopefully enough money, for those three positions. So that leaves, well, very little money, if any money, to sign a left back or a right back. And that's why they don't want to pay 15 million euro for Cancelo. And again, you might ask me, Mo, okay, if they don't have the money to pay 15 for Cancelo, how are they going to pay for Caio Henrique? Well, you guys might recall from a previous video, Monaco want to keep Ansu Fati. They're happy with Ansu. Ansu's happy with Monaco. Ansu has an 11 million euro option to buy that Monaco want to activate. And who's at Monaco? Caio Henrique. And this is where Barcelona, that kind of solves Barcelona's problem of being able to reinforce the left back position without having to make a big expenditure, something that they cannot do because the little money that we have needs to go to the center forward, to the left wing, to the center back. Because if Caio Henrique is, let's go with the high number. Let's say Monaco, say 15. They're saying 12 to 15, but let's stay with 15. The option to buy for Ansu is 11. So you can say, hey, you keep Ansu for free. We take Caio Henrique and we pay the 4 million difference. So all of a sudden, you're getting a left back that can compete with Balde, who's 26, so much younger than Joao Cancelo, and who could potentially only cost you 4 million euro cash as opposed to Joao Cancelo, who would cost you 15 million euro cash, because so far Al Hilal are saying no. 15 or bust. So that's the news. Barcelona considering Caio Henrique as a real option B or plan B, if the Joao Cancelo option does not work out. And of course, my question to you is, Caio Henrique, what do you think? Yes? No? Maybe? Maybe you don't care? I don't know. Let me know in the chat section or in the comment section if you're watching this when it ends. And before we get back to the comment section, Unhinged Mo is about to get unleashed. And I'm going to drink some wine. I know it's Monday. But hey, it's Friday somewhere. Just kidding. It's not. It's Monday everywhere in the world. Well, Tuesday for countries who are several hours ahead of us. But maybe it's Monday on another planet. Sorry, Friday on another planet. But anyways, I had a long day. I had a very tough day at work. And tomorrow I got to go and meet with a client. That's not going to be easy. But anyways, let's get back to the comment section. And then we are going to talk about Jules Kounde and the offer that Liverpool are preparing for and the potential, well, replacement, I should say, for him in case he does end up leaving. And then finally, the last bit of news will be about Alessandro Bastoni. All right, let's see. Where did it leave off? Here. Earl says Victor Munoz isn't Barca quality. He's very one-dimensional and carries a high price compared to other options. Another Roque, why is he the priority? I disagree with that. I think Victor Munoz has definitely has the potential to be a Barca player. I don't think he's ready now to be the starting left winger for Barcelona. They could, carry the attack from the left wing and, be the decisive player in a Champions League knockout match. I don't think he's ready now. But that's why we have Coutinho, right? Rafinha, and that's his job. I think Victor Munoz is someone who maybe in 2-3 years could be that guy who could be the difference maker on the left wing. Let's see. Hell, Rao says, finally, there shouldn't be any emotional attachment crap. Sell Koundé and take that 80 mil. It's even more he should be sold for, to be honest. I need to sell Ferran and Araujo as well. I'll talk about that, about Koundé in a little bit. As far as Ferran and Araujo, like I've said a million times, if the players don't want to leave, there's really not much you could do. People keep forgetting that these players, they're not chattel. They're not slaves. You can't just buy them and sell them like as you please. They have to want to leave. They have to want to join your club if you're buying them. You have to want to leave your club if you're trying to sell them, right? That's why they have contracts. Now, obviously, there are other alternatives you could do, like maybe benching them or putting them in the stands and telling them you're not playing a single minute. But at the end of the day, Barcelona are not in position to do that. I mean, we put Ferran in the stands, and then what? You start Lewy every single match. He can't play every single match. The guy is 100 years old. So, yeah. Mohammed says, hi, Mo. Lucky to be awake to watch the podcast 2:30 a.m. Oh, from Cape Town, South Africa. We should accept Liverpool's offer and sell Koundé. We should also sell Balde. Oh, no. That's a terrible idea. But anyways, we'll talk about Koundé in a little bit. Selling Balde, I think, would be an absolute mistake because let's not forget he's only 21, 22 years old. We've already seen what he's been capable of doing at 18. Probably one of the best left backs in Europe. And you want to sell him, so what? So when he reaches 24, 25, he reaches his prime and becomes the best left back in Europe. Or we can try to sign him back for, 100 mil? No. Selling Balde would be a pretty idiotic thing that Barcelona would do. Tejas says, hey, Mo, any good bargain or hidden gem for any potential relegating clubs from La Liga or EPL? So EPL, obviously, we have Tottenham. It's kind of like a fire sale. A lot of players that could leave. La Liga. Let me look at the table real quick. The table. Let's see. La Liga have Alaves, Levante, and Real Oviedo in the relegation zone. But don't sleep on Sevilla. Are only 37 points, and Alaves have 36, so they're only 1 point away from relegation. And then, of course, Girona and Mallorca are 2 points. Well, and Elche have 2 points from relegation. So any of those teams could be going. I think Real Oviedo are for sure out. Levante, Alaves, Sevilla, Girona, Mallorca, and Elche, any of those could go. As far as any players that we could take advantage to sign, I'll tell you. I think if Mallorca would to go down, I would try to, of course, bargain for Virgili, right? John Virgili, I would try to sign him for much less than what our purchase option is, because if he goes to second division, a lot of these players have release clauses that allow them. Um, Besides that, maybe Mark Dominic from Mallorca. If he goes down, that could be. But at the same time, we have a million freaking midfielders, so I don't know how much we could do with Mark Dominic. But he looks like a very a player with lots of potential. Now, let's see. Sevilla, if they get relegated, even though I don't see it happening, but they are right there. They're only a point away from relegation zone. We could be looking at I don't know if I would. Alexis Sanchez was 37. Just kidding. I don't know if I would want anyone from Sevilla, honestly. Yeah. Well, yeah. I think those two for me for Mallorca, if they get relegated. Uh let's see. What else? What else? What else? Klaus says Paris Fashion Week. Well, to be fair, he hasn't been doing that anymore because ever since Hansi Flick became a coach, he mandated that all players, when they show up to training or matches or whatever, they have to show up in Barca gear. So those like Fashion Week outfits by Koundé was under Xabi, and since Flick took over, we really haven't seen Koundé show up to the facilities or to the stadium in his crazy outfits. Carlos says, how true is it that Barca is close on signing Bernardo Silva? I saw that, but I don't believe it since you haven't said anything. His agent, Jorge Mendes, is pressuring. Is pressuring heavy. He wants to bring Bernardo Silva to Barca. Barcelona are not interested. But that scares me. That scares me that Jorge Mendes is trying to put him here because, Jorge Mendes has John Laporta by the balls, right? And this is what happens when you have a president who just wings it, wings everything. Because he wings it, because he has no plan in place and is constantly improvising, well, he ends up owing people favors. And Laporta owes the most favors to Jorge Mendes, right? Because they don't plan for anything. He doesn't plan for anything. So he has to all the time call Jorge Mendes, be like, hey, I'm in deep trouble. I need you to get rid of this guy. Or Jorge Mendes, all right. The latest was Ansu Fati, right? Deco, Laporta had no plans for Ansu. They wanted to get rid of him. They had no plans for him. And they had to call Jorge Mendes as an emergency, be like, hey, we need to get rid of this guy. And he's like, all right, I got you. So it's Jorge Mendes who does all the work, by the way. He goes to calls the different clubs, see where he can squeeze them. He finds Monaco. He's like, all right, I can squeeze him there. He's the one, Jorge Mendes, who goes to Ansu Fati and says, yo, look, I got you this spot in Monaco, and convinces him to make the move to Monaco, and ends up negotiating the whole deal, ends up closing the whole deal. He ends up doing everything. And which begs the question, why the fuck do we have a sporting director named Deco to begin with, right? So, of course, that doesn't come for free. Jorge Mendes is not stupid. He's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to do all this work, find a club for Ansu, convince them to take Ansu, then convince Ansu to go to that club, and then negotiated the whole thing for free. Of course not. He's going to charge what? He's going to charge for that favor with an IOU, right? And this is where I'm scared that he could be like, well, I did this favor for you for Ansu Fati. Time to pay up. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But again, this is what happens when you have a president who doesn't plan for anything. He ends up owing favors. And Jorge Mendes has Laporta by the balls. This is how Joao Felix ended up at Barcelona. This is how Joao Cancelo ended up at Barcelona under Xabi. Xabi didn't want any of them. This is how Cancelo ended up in Barcelona this time around too. Remember, Flick didn't want Cancelo. Flick asked for a center back, and they brought him a fullback, an offensive fullback that doesn't defend. This is how. Because Jorge Mendes has John Laporta by the balls. If right now you strip John Laporta, he would be smooth like a Ken doll. No balls, just smooth. And then you go to Jorge Mendes' house, and probably in his foyer, maybe in the living room, he probably has John Laporta's balls just hanging on the wall. Or maybe in a display, in a glass display. I don't know. I haven't been to Jorge Mendes' house. But if I do go, I'll let you guys know where are Jean Laporta's balls. Whether they're on the wall, in a display case, if it's on the living room, the dining room. Hopefully not in the dining room. That'd be pretty gross to look at while you're eating. But anyways, I'll let you guys know. All right, let's get back to the news because we do have to talk about Jules Kounde, who seems to be the man of the hour because I see all of you interested in this news. Because, ladies and gentlemen, breaking news out of England. Because reporters in England reporting that Liverpool, yes, Liverpool, are preparing an 80 million euro offer for Jules Kounde. Now, as you know by now, Liverpool, they haven't fared too well despite spending all that money on signings. Because, of course, they did make a mistake which I always talked about, where I've said a club cannot let a coach make all the decision in regards to signings. Because what happens if that coach leaves? Now, all of a sudden, you're stuck with all his signings, right? A club needs to have a clear identity and make signings that fit that identity. That way, if the coach changes, doesn't matter, the identity remains the same. And the players that you have, well, they remain fit to carry out that identity, right? I've made that point a million times before. And Liverpool have learned that lesson because they gave the keys to the club to Arne Slot. He made all these signings. They became the club who has spent the most this summer transfer market. And the result is, well, total collapse, a total disaster. Now, as such, Liverpool will now be looking to make more reinforcements, more signings, rebuild, I guess if you want to call it that, their squad after this failure of a season. And one player they're reportedly looking at is at Jules Kounde because they value the fact that his experience, of course, he has La Liga experience, he has Champions League experience, he has World Cup experience with France and Euros. And, of course, he is a defender that can play both as a right back and as a center back. And as I've said before on the channel, versatility sells. Versatility in this day and age is something that all clubs look for. And as such, it's reported that Liverpool are looking to make an 80 million euro offer for Koundé. Now, Barcelona signed Koundé from Sevilla for 60 million. So not only is this 20 million euro more, but Koundé has already been amortized. So in fact, that 80 million would be pure profit. Not 20 million profit, that 80 million would be pure profit because the 60 million has already been amortized. And of course, given our financial situation, given the fact that we need to sign a center forward, a center back, and a left winger this summer, 80 million could go a long, long way in helping Barcelona make signings, important signings this summer transfer market. But of course, what's the problem? The problem is this is not FIFA. And when I say FIFA, I mean the video game. You can't just sell a player, get 80 million, and that's it. You have to replace him, right? Because people always, just sell Koundé. Okay, cool. And then what? What, you think Xavi Spar can be the starting right back in the Champions League knockout stages? Of course not. He's not ready. Sure, he has the potential. I'm sure one day he will be ready. But right now, do you really trust an 18-year-old from Barça Athletic to be your starting right back? No, right? So, of course, if this happens, we need someone to replace him, right? I'm all for bringing 80 million euros for Koundé, but only if we have a replacement. if we don't have a replacement, you're in a worse shape because now you sold your starter, and then what? Do you think not having a starter is better than having a Koundé in a bad shape? Of course not. Now, here's where the second bit of this news comes in. Because Barcelona do have someone on their radar, someone they've had on their radar for quite some time. They could potentially replace Koundé if Koundé ends up leaving. And it's no other than, of course, Andre Ratiu, someone we've talked about a lot this past summer. 27 years old, right back, Romanian right back. Currently plays for Rayo Vallecano. Someone who just renewed recently with Rayo Vallecano until 2030, which of course gives Rayo Vallecano plenty of what's it called? I'm blanking on the word. Plenty of leverage when negotiating, but he does have a release clause worth 25 million euros. So Barcelona don't even have to negotiate. They could just pay the 25 million and he would be our player, of course, if he wants to, right? Now, there is another positive thing in Barcelona's favor, and that's that Rayo Vallecano's president is Martin Presa. And Martin Presa is a very good friend of Laporta. In fact, when Laporta won re-election, Martin Presa was there during a celebration. So, Barcelona could always use this good relationship with Martin Presa to try to negotiate a good, fair price. But even if that doesn't work, again, Ratiu does have a 25 million euro release clause, so you can always just pay it and be done with it and not have to worry about negotiating. Of course, the player would have to want to come again. So, taking this into consideration, would I sell Koundé for 80 mil? On paper, yes. Because you sell Koundé for 80 mil, let's say Rayo Vallecano don't want to negotiate, so you take 25 million out of that 80 mil and sign Andre Ratiu, and you still have 55 million left, which you could then use to pay for Bastoni. And all of a sudden, by selling Koundé, you just sign a replacement for him in Ratiu and Bastoni. You just got a 2-for-1 deal. And the 150 million that you had already budgeted for the summer, all of a sudden, you only need to spend it on 2 positions, a left wing and a center forward, rather than spending it on 3 positions, because the center back just got covered by the money you used to sell Ratiu. Koundé. Now, of course, for all of this to work, we would have to be under the 1-1 rule. Otherwise, the math is not going to math. Now, as you might recall a few moments ago, I said on paper, yes. In theory, I don't know if Ratiu is the answer for a right back position. Now, he does fit the profile. Now, an offensive fullback, incredibly fast. If he's not the fastest, he's one of the fastest fullbacks in La Liga. But I don't know if he necessarily has the quality to be a Champions League fullback. Do I think Andre Ratiu can kill it in La Liga and be an amazing fullback against all La Liga teams, including Real Penalties and Atletico Madrid? Sure, yeah, absolutely. But do I think he could be the fullback to stop Bayern, PSG, Man City in the Champions League? I don't know. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying yes either. I'm saying I don't know. I think he's a great La Liga fullback, but I don't know if he would be a great Champions League fullback. And that's what we need, right? Right now, we're not looking to build a La Liga team. We got that. We got that already. We won it last season. We're about to win it this season. A La Liga team we have. That's not a problem. what we need to be building towards is a Champions League team. That's where we're lacking. So, can Andre Ratiu be a Champions League player? I don't know. Can he be a La Liga player? Absolutely. He already is, and I think he will be absolutely amazing. So that's where my problem kind of lies. But I'll let you guys decide. You let me know. Maybe you know more things about Ratiu that I don't. Do you think Ratiu could be that starting right back in the Champions League? Not in La Liga. In La Liga, yes, for sure. 100%. Eyes closed. In the Champions League. Let me know. Because if he can, fuck it. This is an easy operation. Sell Koundé for 80. Use 25 to sign Ratiu. Use the other 55 to sign Bastoni. Easy peasy, right? Assuming Koundé would want to leave. But again, my question to you is, do you think Ratiu could be a Champions League fullback? Let me know in the chat section or in the comment section if you're watching this when it ends. All right, let's do more comments, and then we are going to talk about Alessandro Bastoni, who likes pizza and pasta. Well, I don't know if he likes pizza and pasta. I imagine he does. All right, let's see. Where did we leave off? I think here. Right here. Klaus, who says, if I was the Barcelona squad, I would have Puyol mindset week in, week out from my heart with no need for competition. And I am sure everyone here will be the same. Easier said than done, my friends. Easier said than done. Because, and this comes from someone who's competed his whole life. I've played football competitively. I've swam competitively. I've cycled competitively. And of course, fought MMA competitively. Amateur level. Not looking to look pro. I don't need my head busted. And as someone who's been competing since a very young age, that's easier said than done. We all say, and I'm sure the players say themselves, yeah, I'll be competitive. But when you're tired, when you're exhausted, when your muscles ache, when your body's beat up, when you're bruised, when it's hard to get out of bed because you're in so much pain, when you have no energy, when you're out of breath, when you're completely wiped, that's when it matters. That's when it matters. When you just want to give up because you can't. You just can't. That's when it matters. And half of this game, if not 60, 70% of this game is mental. Any sport is, right? What separates the greats from the rest, a lot of time is just mental. Bojan Krkić was supposed to be the next Messi. He had the skills and the talent to be the next Messi. He was, I don't want to say as good as Messi, but very, very close. He ended up playing in fucking Canada in MLS. Why? He didn't have the mental fortitude for it. So it's easy to say, yeah, I would be Puyol, I would be. But in reality, in practice, easier said than done. At the end of the day, again, this whole thing is mental, mostly mental. You're going to have two players with identical skill level, and one of them become one of the greatest, and one of them become an average player who plays for Rayo Vallecano. And if you study them, the difference was all mental. In fact, in tennis, they've studied this. In tennis, the top 20 players of the world, if you compare their skill level, it's almost identical between number 1 and number 20. Almost identical, their skill level. What's the difference? Right here. And that's the difference between number 1 and number 20. Same exact skill level, but it's all mental. And I'm sure that number 20 guy says, oh, I'm going to give it my all. I would be the Puyol of tennis. But saying that, thinking that, completely different than actually being that. Piscal Barça says, I hate to admit it, but Kylian Dictator would have thrived in Barca. On paper, yes. Because Mbappe is clearly a goal scoring machine. I mean, even as Madrid are falling apart, he's still putting out crazy numbers. I mean, last season, he was Golden Boot and top scorer of La Liga, Pichichi. This season, he's still Pichichi of La Liga. He might get surpassed since he's injured, but he's currently Pichichi of La Liga. I don't think he's Golden Boot. I haven't looked at the Golden Boot numbers. So on paper, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lamine Yamal feeding Mbappe balls from the right, Rafinha feeding him from the left, Pedri feeding him through the middle. I mean, yeah, if he was able to score 40 plus goals for Madrid, who are a bunch of bums, with Barca, he'd be able to put up 80. So on paper, yes. But here's the problem with Mbappe. He's someone who likes to play for himself, not for the badge, not for the colors, not for his teammates, right? That's why Luis Enrique was like, I want this guy out of here. Can you imagine going over, becoming a coach of a club, and your first thing is like, I want the best player in the world after Messi out of here. I want him out. Can you imagine saying that? like Al Khalifi must have been like, what? Who do you want now? Excuse me? And that's the problem. So, I want to say yes, but at the same time, I mean, if Luis Enrique, who's a two-time six-tuple winner, didn't want Mbappe because of his attitude, I don't know if he would have thrived at Barca. On paper, of course, but in practice, I don't know, man. I don't know. Ethan says Bernal clears De Jong. Bernal is a big vain player. De Jong is a big disappointment. Bro, Bernal is the future. Bernal is there's people who try to argue with me about this. Bro, Bernal at 18 years old has what it takes to bench Frankie, which he's done already. That tells you everything you need to know, especially since Frankie's 26, 27, a player in his prime with all the experience in the world, being benched by an 18-year-old who has zero experience. That tells you everything. Bernal is the future, ladies and gentlemen. If you can't see it by now, I don't know what to tell you. All right, let's do the last bit of news and then we'll do more comments because we are coming up on the 1 hour mark. But let's talk about Alessandro Bastoni, who is, of course, Barcelona's number one option to reinforce the center back position. Someone who's 26 years old, in his prime, left-footed, can build from the back, can drive the ball forward, has experience, has composure, is a leader on the field, pretty much meets and ticks off all the boxes that Barcelona are looking for. And even though for the longest time Inter Milan said, no, he is not for sale, they have now changed their position because Inter Milan are they're in financial trouble and they need to sell players. And one of those players is Bastoni, who can generate a lot of money for them. That can help them address some of their financial concerns. Now, Bastoni has already given the green light to come to Barcelona. He's already reached a verbal agreement with the club. He's pretty much said, yes, I want to go to Barca, make this happen. And as such, now Barcelona are working on negotiating with Inter Milan. Now, what's the update? Because I told you this news several weeks ago. So you might be wondering, Mo, what has happened since then? Well, I got the update. But first, let's review the statements, the most recent statements of Inter Milan's president and Inter Milan's sporting director, because their statements have caused, of course, a lot of talks on social media with people saying, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. Supposedly, Barcelona are negotiating or in talks with Inter Milan, but these two guys are saying differently. So, what did they say? And then I'll explain to you the context of those statements and, of course, give you an actual update of what's going on with Alessandro Bastoni. All right, let's see. Now, Inter Milan's president said, at the moment, Bastoni is our player. He wants to stay, and we're happy to keep him with us. Now, the sporting director said, Bastoni? Bastoni? Trying to channel his reaction. Bastoni? We haven't received any offers regarding Bastoni. He's a valuable player for Inter and for Italy. A strong player, an incredible footballer, and we want to keep him. Now, if you look at these statements on the surface, it sounds like this whole thing that Barca are in talks, they want to sign him. It's all BS, right? Here's the president and the sporting directors, two very important people at Inter, right? This is not the ball boy and the janitor telling you this. No, this is the president and the sporting director, and they're both telling you he's great. You want to keep him. So it sounds like, well, Barcelona are not actually in talks. The Barcelona are not actually doing anything. But if you dig a little deeper, you see that that's not completely true, right? Because the sporting director says, we want to keep him. Want, it's a different thing from actually happening, right? We want to keep him. Sure, of course they do. Everybody does. Who wouldn't? But that's a whole different case, right? And the president says, at the moment, Bastoni is our player. He's not saying he will remain our player. He's going to be our player next season. He says, at the moment, right? And at the moment, I'm doing a podcast. But in a little bit, I won't be, right? So, if you dig a little bit deeper, you realize that it's not what the press are trying to sell you. That, oh, it's all BS, because look at these statements. And in fact, and this is where the update comes in, the reason why they're saying this, the president and the sporting director, is because Barcelona have yet to make an official offer. And why hasn't Barcelona made an official offer? Because the initial talks, Barcelona have already started talks with Inter Milan, came back with Inter Milan saying, we want 70 million euros. And that's a figure that Barcelona are not willing to pay. They're willing to do maybe a player plus cash, and in total, that would be worth 70. But actual cash, paying 70 million cash, that's not something that Barcelona are willing to do. They're willing to pay 50, 55. If they can negotiate that down to 50 or 55, they would pay it. Or maybe pay 50 in cash plus a player, right? A lot of players that Inter are interested in. Hector Ford, Rooney Bardarji. So that's where it's at. Now, because Inter Milan, during these initial talks, said we want 70 million euros, Barcelona are now trying to play the long game. And what's the long game? Try to put pressure on Inter Milan to lower that price, because Inter Milan, again, need to sell players. They need to address their financial situation. And as time passes, as the fiscal year nears an end, Inter Milan are going to get more and more desperate. And in the meantime, Barcelona are filtering names, such as John Lucomi. That's the one we talked about before. El Cuti Romero. That's another name we've talked about, right? Leaking names to the press to make it look, to make it obvious to Inter Milan. Hey, we want Bastoni, but if you don't want to, we cool. We got other options, right? You don't. Because Bastoni has made it clear. It's either Barca or Inter. And if Barca need to sell, and Bastoni's not willing to go anywhere else besides Barca, all of a sudden, they're in a bind. We're not. We got other options. So that's the long game that Barcelona are trying to play. As far as Bastoni himself, he's not looking to put pressure until Barcelona make an initial offer. If Barcelona make an actual offer, Bastoni then will sit down with the Inter Milan's higher-ups and be like, hey, I want to go to Barca, and try to put pressure. But until then, he's not going to make a move. So for now, it's a cat and mouse game. Well, actually, no. It's a chicken game to see who blinks first. Now, hopefully, it will be Inter. Because, again, Barcelona want Bastoni. Bastoni wants Barca. But Barca will not pay those 70 million that Inter Milan are currently asking for. So that's the update in regards to Alessandro Bastoni. Let me know what you guys think. And with that, let's do a few more comments and then we'll wrap up this podcast. Let's see. Where did I leave off? John says, I think I would take Bernardo Silva as a backup for Pedri. No, we don't need a backup for Pedri. First of all, Bernardo Silva, his best years are way behind him, right? I mean, he himself said he wants to trade Man City for a beach destination with good food. That should tell you everything there is to tell you. The guy is looking to sell into the sunset. He's looking to chill. When he goes to Barca, I'm not saying he's not going to give us good performances. He's not going to be pushing, right? He's not going to go that extra mile. He's not going to, when he's tired, when he's exhausted, when he feels like his leg is about to give up, he's not going to go that extra mile and push past the pain so we can win because that's it. He's won everything there is to win. He's looking to coast. He's looking to tan on the beach and sip on margaritas and eat crema catalana. So no, we don't need anyone like that. Right now, we're trying to win the Champions League, and bringing players like that is not going to help us win the Champions League. What we need is players who are hungry, who want to win, who willing to go the extra mile, who willing to give it their all, who willing to like play until they fall off, they pass out because they want to win. That's not Bernardo Silva at this moment. As far as backup for Pedri, we have a million midfielders, my friend. A million midfielders. Let's see. David says Koundé in cash for Isaac. Nah, Isaac, they validate him at 150 mil. That's not going to happen. Trading Koundé, even if he's worth 80 mil, we would have to add another 70 mil for Isaac. That would be insane. Isaac is not worth 150 mil, even if that's what they're trying to ask for. That would be an incredibly terrible deal. Eddie says 3 La Liga titles, 2 Copas del Rey, and 3 Super Cups aren't bad for a president who just wings everything. I guess. I mean, Bartomeu won a sextuple, so I guess fuck it. Bartomeu, great president, bro. Let's fucking go. Amazing. Since apparently that's how we're justifying president's performances. Biscal Barça says Barca should grab all the cheap and good players available in domestic league. This is what PSG and Bayern do. Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Also, that's not all they do. PSG has spent some insane amounts of money. So have Bayern. So I think it's a simplistic way of summarizing what PSG do. And Bayern. Klaus says, use the 80 mil to build a time machine, go back in time and get a prime Dani Alves. Oof. Man, I miss prime Dani Alves before he retired and started doing crazy things at clubs, if you know what I mean. And P4K channel with the donation. Let's fucking go. Thank you so much, my friend, for your generosity. But P4K Chema says 150 million budget. We receive 80 million on top for Koundé. We go pay Dumfries release clause 25 mil, and we can try Davis for 45 to 50. Bastoni and Dumfries chemistry is already there. 2 positions for the price of 1. Right. But I don't think Bayern are looking to sell Davis. And when a club doesn't want to sell a player, they're going to want a lot more, right? They cannot not sell at all, right? But that's when you slap a fat price ticket on the player, right? Like Julian Alvarez. Atletico are not looking to sell, but they know that they cannot not sell, right? They cannot sell. So what they say, we want at least 120, which even though it's a price that you could technically pay, or actually, 150, they know nobody's going to want to pay that, right? It's like a release clause. When you put a 1 billion euro release clause on Lamine, right? You're not, technically he is for sale. You can pay the 1 billion and he's yours, but essentially we know that nobody's going to pay the 1 billion. So essentially you're saying he's not for sale. So with Davis, Bayern are not looking to sell. So he might be worth that, 45 to 50 mil, but Bayern are going to put some crazy price tag on him to essentially tell you he's not for sale. He technically is, because look at this big price. If you pay, it's yours, but nobody's going to, it will be. right? As far as Dumfries, how old is he? Like 31, 32? Let me see. He's 30. Okay, so Dumfries is 30, but he will be 31. Oh, no, he just turned 30. I don't know if paying his release clause at 30 would be worth it. Especially because his market value is 25. So you're paying his market value essentially for a player who's on a decline, right? Because 30, you're already past your prime, you're going to start declining. I don't know if 25 million for Dumfries would be worth it. If we can negotiate that down. I mean, remember, at that point, just pay the 15 for Cancelo. And that's it. And Barcelona not even willing to do that. So I don't know if the 25 mil for Dumfries would be truly worth it. Not to mention that I don't see Bayern selling Davis at all. But we'll see what this summer brings us. And again, all this assumes that Koundé would want to be sold to Liverpool, which is a big assumption. But anyways, thank you for your donation, my friend. I appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. This is a wrap for me. I think I'm going to post a news video in a little bit, so stay tuned to the channel. Don't forget to hit the like button. Very, very important. Very, very, very important. Don't forget to subscribe. And, of course, drop a comment to let me know what you guys thought about all the news that I share with you. I will see you guys later. And as always, peace, guys.